Upon entering my new school, I sensed the imminent shift in my surroundings. Having been born and bred in Philly, relocating an hour away from the bustling city was bound to require some adaptation. And by adaptation, I mean embracing the change with open arms. At the behest of my father and the persistence of my mother, I diligently kept myself out of trouble, steering clear of any unnecessary entanglements. The demographic makeup of the area was quite diverse, a mix of blacks, Hispanics, Italians, Jews, and predominantly hard-nosed Dutch descendants. They weren't of the Amish or Mennonite stock, but rather staunch German Lutherans who held sway over the locality. Despite the eclectic blend, I found it relatively easy to blend in, although I couldn't help but long for the camaraderie of my Philly friends. Post-graduation, I opted to stay put, primarily to remain close to my family. Yet, I still made regular sojourns back to my old neighborhood, keeping the ties strong with my childhood companions. My foray into the workforce commenced with a job driving a fuel oil delivery truck. Over time, I transitioned to an indoor role, handling dispatch and orders. It became apparent that I had a natural aptitude for the industry, and I could envision myself as the proprietor of a similar venture in the not-so-distant future. Forming friendships with individuals of the opposite sex came effortlessly to me, and my social life exceeded my expectations. When I tied the knot, my mother harbored a slight disappointment that my spouse, Elena, wasn't of Italian descent. However, she made every effort to ensure that Elena was warmly embraced without any reservations. After the arrival of our 2 children, Elena advocated for me to undergo a vasectomy. I had no objections to the idea, but as the children started school, Elena expressed her desire to re-enter the workforce. My father held the belief that it wasn't ideal for a wife and mother to pursue a career outside the home. While I couldn't entirely grasp the reasoning behind his stance at the time, upon reflection, it seemed to align with certain traditional values. It wasn't that I objected to Elena's decision to work, but rather I felt uncomfortable with the idea of her socializing extensively with people from her past, some of whom I didn't particularly care for. During her school days, Elena was deeply involved in various extracurricular activities, which she thoroughly enjoyed. Conversely, I steered clear of such engagements and the individuals associated with them, perceiving them as elitist cliques focused on mutual admiration. Although both Elena and I had experienced previous relationships, we never broached the topic, simply falling into a tacit understanding not to delve into our respective pasts. After a decade of marriage, cracks began to surface in our relationship. Elena had been diligently working in the claims department of a local national insurance company. My concerns heightened when she started clocking in overtime and sacrificing weekends for work. It was 6 months later when the breaking point became unmistakably clear to me. It was when the seminar came into the picture. "Marco, I don't understand what the issue is. It's just 3 days. I've already arranged for your mom to look after the kids while I'm away. You'll be home in the evenings. You can handle cooking for yourself," Elena argued, seemingly oblivious to my growing unease. I couldn't believe she had the audacity to even ask. "Who else is attending the seminar?" I inquired, trying to maintain composure. Her demeanor brightened a bit as she responded, 6 girls from the department, Vivian Wright from personnel, and Derek." A smile crept onto my face upon hearing his name. It was astounding that she hadn't realized I was aware of her clandestine lunches and late-night work sessions with her immediate superior, Directores. Derek and Elena share a history, having grown up together. He was the epitome of the overachiever in school, involved in every club and activity except sports. "Do you think I'm some kind of fool, Elena?" I snapped, my frustration palpable. Confusion flickered across her face. "I don't understand. What are you talking about?" she replied innocently. "I've known about you and Derek for 6 months now. If you think I'm going to let you go away with him for 3 days, you're out of your mind," I retorted, my tone tinged with bitterness. "Marco, you're misunderstanding. Derek is my boss. There's nothing going on between us. I would never cheat on you. You know that," she protested, her eyes pleading for understanding. I glanced down at the empty Budweiser can in my hand, my grip tightening involuntarily. Slowly, I rose from my chair and made my way to the kitchen. With a clenched fist, I crushed the thin aluminum and hurled it towards the trash can, missing by inches. The sound of the new can hissing as I popped the top echoed in the tense silence as I returned to my seat. "You're a good mother to our children, Elena. That's the only reason you're still here." I've spoken to my mom about all of this. She advised me to stand firm and hope that you come to your senses for the sake of the kids. If I were to leave you, the courts would grant you custody. I can't let that happen, I explained, the weight of the situation heavy in the air. "You told your mother I was cheating on you." Elena's voice wavered, disbelief etched across her features. "No, a lady from church spilled the beans. I simply didn't deny it when she confronted me," I admitted coolly. Her eyes widened in shock. "You can't be serious. I don't believe you." "Why are you saying all this?" she implored, desperation lacing her tone. Taking a hefty swig of beer, I couldn't help but smirk. "Derek resides at 321 David Drive, just 3 blocks from your office. You and your boss frequent his place, usually 3 times a week, lingering for nearly 3 hours each visit. Care to enlighten me on what exactly goes on there for 3 hours? And while we're at it, care to explain the overtime you've been clocking at the office? Did you know your office clean lady also attends church with my mother?" Tears welled up in her eyes, her lower lip trembling as she struggled to find words. "As long as you refrain from publicly humiliating me or my family, I'll refrain from taking drastic measures. But if that changes, all bets are off. You can stay or you can leave, but you'll never take my boys from me," I declared firmly. With a mix of fury and anguish, Elena rose abruptly from her seat. "Damn you, Marco. I hate you," she spat, before storming out of the room, tears streaming down her cheeks. It was the first time she had ever sworn at me, and the first time she had uttered derogatory remarks about my heritage. The Dutchie in her had finally surfaced. We had 2 boys, Harry and Jack, who shared a room with a set of bunk beds. The 3rd bedroom served as a catch-all space. That's where I ended up sleeping from that point onwards. It was a rented house. Despite having over $60,000 saved for a down payment on our dream home, my dreams had turned into a nightmare. The seminar incident was never brought up again. Elena ceased working overtime and started bringing her lunch to work. The atmosphere at home wasn't just chilly, it was icy and frigid. My mom hadn't received any new intel from her church acquaintances. Things appeared to be returning to normal, but I couldn't shake off the discomfort. There was a noticeable absence of intimacy, and I knew I couldn't endure that situation for much longer. Despite my reservations, I reluctantly agreed to accompany Elena to her company Christmas party. I didn't want to leave her to attend alone, and I figured I could pass the evening quietly by simply staying out of the way. It seemed like a good plan at the time, but it was riddled with flaws. The company had rented out a spacious hall equipped with a dance floor, a lavish buffet table, and a couple of open bars. I could nurse 3 beers throughout the entire evening without feeling any adverse effects. When we arrived, the only available tables were situated near the company's top brass, conspicuously vacant as it seemed employees were deliberately avoiding those seats. Things appeared to be going smoothly for the first hour. I observed Derek across the room, casually mingling with his buddies. While several of Elena's colleagues invited her to dance, Derek remained conspicuously absent. I was more than happy to let her enjoy herself on the dance floor, as dancing wasn't my cup of tea. As I sipped on my 3rd beer, I couldn't help but notice subtle exchanges of glances between Elena and Derek from across the room. It was mainly comprised of nods and subtle head tilts, but it was evident that something was brewing between them. I did my best to feign disinterest and boredom while discreetly keeping a watchful eye on their interactions. As my wife excused herself to visit the restroom, I quickly scanned the room and realized Derek was nowhere to be seen. It was baffling. After our heated discussion at home, it seemed utterly foolish for her to attempt a rendezvous with him while we were both in the same building. She could easily have met him at work without any risk of being caught. I couldn't shake the feeling that her motive was to humiliate me by flaunting her connection with Derek in front of everyone. By engaging with him at a company event, she would be publicly branding me as a cuckold. As Alana disappeared down the hallway towards the restrooms, Derek's cronies, wearing smug grins, stood clustered by one of the bars. Before heading to the restroom myself, I made a detour to the head table. Leaning in, I offered a faux apology for any disruption, solely to attract their attention. The group across the room, previously sporting self-satisfied grins, now appeared unsettled. They seemed unsure of how to assist Derek in this unexpected situation. Entering the empty ladies' room first, I then ventured into the men's room. What I witnessed next unfolded in a blur of shock and anger. There they were, locked in an embrace. His back was to me, his hand creeping up her skirt, and to my dismay, there was no resistance from her. I seized Derek by the collar and forcefully shoved him against the wall, ignoring my wife's frantic cries echoing in the background. With a swift motion, I brought him to the ground. The once lively hall fell eerily silent as I dragged Derek to the center of the floor by his tie. The orchestra had halted their music, and all eyes were fixed on the unfolding scene. Surveying the room, I noted the absence of any offers of assistance for Derek. "I apologize for disrupting your festivities. I'll be taking my leave now, but feel free to entertain yourselves with my unfaithful wife," I declared, the bitterness in my tone palpable. As Derek struggled to rise to his hands and knees, Elena stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of shock and disbelief. It was unclear whether her distress was directed at what I had done to her lover or the humiliating declaration I had made to her colleagues. Frankly, it didn't concern me. Observing Derek positioned directly beneath the mistletoe, a sudden impulse overtook me. Before departing, I delivered a sharp kick, ensuring he wouldn't forget the encounter anytime soon. He crumpled to the ground in agony, yet not a single word was uttered by the onlookers. I phoned my mom from the car, requesting her to swing by the house to pick up the boys. The notion of going out of town for a few days felt like a necessary escape, and I had no intention of leaving the kids with their mother. I doubted she'd be in any state to care for them properly. Driving aimlessly, I found myself formulating plans without a clear destination in mind. Thankfully, my boss didn't object to granting me a week off. Upon my arrival home, my parents were already there. After settling the babysitter's fees, I assisted in preparing the boys for their grandmother's care. My hastily packed bag consisted mostly of socks and underwear, with a few shirts and pants thrown in just in case. Before departing, I retrieved the cash box from the basement rafters. Given the paltry interest rates offered by banks, I had opted to keep the $62,000 stash at home. Admittedly, it may seem foolish, but it was a trait I inherited from my mom, who used to keep sizable stashes scattered throughout her kitchen. As I went about turning off the lights, a taxi pulled up, depositing Elena at the doorstep. She entered wordlessly, sinking onto the couch without a sound. Her expression was more one of concern than anger, more troubled and fearful. I made it clear, didn't I? Just one rule. Don't embarrass me or my family in public. But you couldn't resist, could you? I uttered calmly, watching as tears welled in her eyes before turning and walking out the door. It was a little after 9 when I merged onto the Schuylkill Expressway. Well, that party didn't last long, for me, at least. I decided to spend a few days in Atlantic City before heading home, but first, I needed to catch up with my old friend Luca. Luca ran a sandwich shop in our old neighborhood. It wasn't one of those flashy places you see in Philly travel guides. Rather, it served as a local convenience for the nearby residents. His main source of income came from other ventures that most of us either overlooked or were involved in ourselves. He lived on the second floor and operated out of the back room. Meeting Luca felt like a trip down memory lane. After explaining my predicament, he agreed to lend a hand. "Marco, it's going to cost you 20. Can you handle that? Or do you need me to spot you?" Luca inquired. "I've got it up front. No problem," I replied confidently. "Do you want it messy or quiet?" Luca asked. "Transparent. No fuss, no muss. Nothing," I asserted. "You're leaving for a few days. Do you have anything set up?" Luca inquired further. "No plans. I was thinking of heading to Atlantic City," I responded. "How about 6 days and 7 nights at the Taj?" Luca suggested. "What are you talking about, Luca? I questioned. I've got some comps coming in. I think it would work out pretty well for you, Luca explained. Sounds good to me, I agreed. Are you going alone, Marco? Luca probed. Yeah, this was all sort of spur of the moment. I didn't have time to invite anyone, I admitted. You shouldn't be alone. You need somebody to help verify that you were there. Hold on a minute, Luca said before picking up the phone and dialing a familiar number. Bella, it's Luca. Make yourself pretty and get your ass down here, Luca instructed over the phone, then chuckled before continuing, No, nothing like that. You're going on vacation. Marco, do you remember Bella, my brother Michael's oldest? Luca asked me. Yeah, chubby little thing with dark brown eyes. I remember she was always laughing. How old is she now? I recalled. Luca smiled at my recollection of his niece. She's 23 now, Marco, and she ain't chubby anymore. Suddenly, it dawned on me that Bella would be joining me for the trip to the shore. The thought made me slightly uneasy, considering she was Luca's niece, but then again, he was the one orchestrating the whole thing. Marco, do you have a credit card? Luca inquired. I have 2 of them. I was planning to cancel them Monday morning, I replied. Don't do that. I want you to use those credit cards as much as possible. Meals out, room service, maybe even some casino cash advances, but don't go overboard. You need the credit card activity to prove you were there. Spread it out over time so it doesn't look like you snuck back home. It might cost you a couple of grand, but it's cheap insurance, Luca advised. Luca clearly knew his stuff. It all made perfect sense. As I contemplated his advice, Bella entered the room. Marco, I haven't seen you since you moved up to the sticks. You look great, Bella exclaimed. I now understood why Luca was smiling. Bella was stunningly beautiful. Her dark eyes were mesmerizing, and any remnants of baby fat she once had seemed to have relocated to her chest. In my flustered state, I clumsily knocked over my chair as I jumped to my feet. Marco needs someone to keep him company in Atlantic City for a few days. Are you up for it? Luca inquired. Her demeanor shifted slightly at his words. Aren't you still married? She questioned, turning her attention to me. Before I could respond, Luca intervened. The marriage is over, Bella. Marco needs a companion right now. I know you always liked him, so I thought of you first, Luca explained. Luca, I can't be a part of breaking up someone's family. It's not right for you to ask me to do this. Can't you just get one of the girls to accompany him? I protested. I'm not asking you to sleep with him. Just keep him company and help him forget his troubles, Luca reasoned. Bella's expression shifted as if she had just pieced something together. She was not only stunning, but also quick-witted. I'm sorry, she said, glancing between Luca and me with a small smile. I'd be happy to go with you, Marco, but you have to promise to buy me some saltwater taffy. We all shared a smile. I'll need about an hour to get ready. Luca, make sure he doesn't drink anything. I don't want to drive down there with a drunk, Bella instructed as she left to gather her things, perhaps giving me a playful wink. While Bella was away, Luca and I reviewed our conversation. He graciously accepted my $20,000 and assured me of his full commitment. The drive to Atlantic City was uneventful, except for the detailed rundown I provided Bella about the issues with Elena. Her only response was, "Oh, the poor kids." Bella frowned upon seeing the double beds in our room, but fortunately, she didn't notice my suppressed chuckle. I had a strong feeling that we'd only be using one of them before the week was over. All good things come in time. We dabbled in a bit of gambling, but kept it restrained. I was wise enough to understand that in the grand scheme, the odds were stacked against me. Bella was content with the quarter slots, while I simply sought a diversion. More often than not, we found ourselves relishing meals and strolling along the boardwalk, and naturally, we caught every show in town. The first night, I maintained my gentlemanly demeanor, but by noon on the second day, Bella and I were igniting sparks between the sheets. My mother had been right. I should have married an Italian girl. It felt effortless, and I didn't feel as though I was betraying anyone. As we were preparing for dinner on the fourth day, we received unexpected visitors. 2 men, not in suits but in sports jackets, stood at our door. "I'm Louis Coleman, and this is my partner, Oscar Jenkins. We're from the Berks County Special Crimes Task Force. Mind if we have a word with you, Marco Romano?" Louis introduced them. Bella emerged from the bathroom in her undergarments, glancing over at the men before fetching her bathrobe from the bed. Though slightly embarrassed, she understood the gravity of the situation. "Can you give me an idea of what we'll be discussing?" I inquired. "We'd like to discuss your connection with directors," Louis replied. "I didn't have a relationship with directors. My wife did," I clarified. For some reason, they appeared slightly uneasy. Coleman took the lead in conversation while Oscar seemed preoccupied with staring at Bella. "We understand, Mr. Romano. We're aware of the altercation you had with him last Friday at the Continental Insurance Christmas party," Coleman explained. "Is he pressing charges?" I inquired. "No, he's gone missing, and we were hoping you could assist us in locating him," Coleman replied. "Gentlemen, before we proceed, I'd like to have someone from the Atlantic City Police Department present, and I don't mean just any officer. If you can't arrange that, I'll need a lawyer, my lawyer from Reading," I asserted. There was no immediate response from my visitors. "Bella, get dressed. We're heading out for supper. Apologies, gentlemen, but we have reservations at 6 o'clock. The steaks at the safari are outstanding. I may be available to speak with you this Friday if needed," I offered. They seemed taken aback by my response. "Why do you suspect something happened to this guy? Maybe he simply left town for a while," I suggested. "He was picked up by a cab leaving Community General Hospital on Sunday morning, and no one has seen him since," Coleman revealed. Bella had finished dressing, and I was slipping on my jacket. "Well, I've been here since Friday night, and you can verify that with the hotel staff. Now, if you'll excuse me, we're off for a couple of steaks. Any further questions can wait until Friday," I stated firmly. "Yes, we'll expect to see you then," Coleman responded. With a simple nod, I guided them towards the door. We rode down in the elevator together, but no more words were exchanged. When we reached the lobby, they headed towards hotel security, while Bella and I made our way to the safari. Harry and Jack greeted me enthusiastically when I arrived home, and the saltwater taffy I brought back only added to their joy. However, Elena seemed distant and chilly. It was evident she had no clue about the day's events. After my discussion with the police, I spent the rest of the afternoon with the boys and planned to have a conversation with Elena later that evening. The boys were settled in front of the TV for the evening, so I took a seat at the kitchen table, patiently waiting for Elena to finish cleaning up. She seemed to be taking longer than usual, but I remained seated, unmoved. Finally, she turned towards me and sat down, resting her elbows on the formica top. "What did you do with Tarek?" Her tone wasn't accusatory or angry. Rather, she seemed genuinely concerned. Her gaze shifted between me and the room as she awaited my response. "I was in Atlantic City all week. I haven't seen Tarek since the party," I replied. "You hurt him," she stated matter-of-factly. "I hope so," I responded bluntly. "He was in the hospital for 2 days. You broke his jaw and his nose," she informed me. "He deserved it," I retorted. She seemed to have run out of questions. "What were you doing with him in the men's room?" I pressed after a moment of silence. There was no response from Elena. She sat, wringing her hands and avoiding eye contact, fixated on the tabletop. "Why did he have his hand up your skirt?" I questioned, still met with silence. "Why aren't you at work, and why are the kids home on a school day?" I queried further. "I had to quit work. There was no way I could go back there again." "I took the boys out of school because your mother said you might be home today," Elena confessed. It was time to address the issues head-on. "I made it clear, Elena. There was only one rule. Don't do anything that would humiliate me or my family. A straightforward rule. Why did you feel the need to break it? Both of you just seemed determined to rub it in. Why?" I demanded, my frustration mounting with each word. Elena appeared increasingly nervous as we sat there. I slammed my fist onto the tabletop forcefully. "I asked you why." "Damn it, answer me," I insisted. I don't know why. It just happened. You were sitting there like a lost puppy, and we thought we could take advantage of the situation. We had no idea you would react like that. You went berserk. I was terrified," she confessed, her voice trembling with emotion. At least she was showing some emotion, but her explanation made no sense. I refused to dwell on it. It was foolish of them to choose that moment and that place to humiliate me. They had weeks to plan their rendezvous before the party, and I would have been none the wiser. No, their intention was clear, and Elena's excuses wouldn't change that fact. "Elena, you have 3 options. You can choose to stay here and fulfill your responsibilities as a mother to your children. You can opt for a divorce and leave without custody of the kids, or you can simply vanish from our lives altogether. However, if you decide to stay, understand that we won't be living as husband and wife, and I won't tolerate any further affairs with Derek or anyone else," I stated firmly. At the mention of Derek's name, Elena broke into tears. Before she could make a decision, she fled from the room, sobbing uncontrollably. It seemed the conversation would have to be continued another day. Changes were made. I secured a small apartment a few blocks away from the house, close enough for the boys to visit whenever they wished. Bella moved in with me. The police interviewed me a few more times before ceasing their inquiries. Derek Torres had been last seen picked up by a taxi outside the hospital, but his whereabouts remained unknown. Despite his family offering a reward for any information, no leads were forthcoming. Every evening, I joined Elena and the boys for supper, and I made sure to spend quality time with my sons on the weekends. Despite still being legally married, it was evident to everyone that Elena and I were no longer a couple. She often visited her parents and sister, which didn't bother me. There were no signs of her seeing anyone else, though she had quit her job after the Christmas party and showed no interest in finding another. We never revisited the conversation we had the first night I returned home. Elena fulfilled her role as a devoted mother impeccably. The house was always tidy, the boys well-fed, and they consistently had clean clothes. I handled all the outdoor chores, ensuring the lawn and surroundings were well-maintained. Elena received a weekly allowance of $200 to cover household expenses, groceries, and personal needs. Despite my offer to provide more, she always declined. We no longer relied on credit cards. During Thanksgiving and Christmas, the boys and I spent time with my family, often accompanied by Bella. Elena typically spent the holidays with her own family, but made sure to join us on Christmas Eve to celebrate with the boys. Conversations about the relationship between their mother and me became awkward whenever Harry or Jack brought it up. Both Elena and I adamantly refused to engage in discussion on the matter with them. I appreciated her stance, but then again, what could she possibly say? The facade continued for years, with my brief explanation hardly capturing the complexities of our situation. Constant complications and disagreements arose, yet somehow we managed to navigate through them. Initially, things were going well with Bella. However, as time passed, she began to spend more time with her family in Philly and less with me. I couldn't blame her. I was indebted to her for the efforts she made to ease the breakup. Despite the challenges, I found myself unable to divorce Elena, and as long as the boys were still at home, I couldn't bring myself to ask her to leave. These were self-imposed limitations, but ones I felt compelled to honor. I detested the entire situation, but I couldn't devise an alternative plan. However, the boys found a way to do just that. When Harry was 16, things reached a breaking point. A new student at his school, who happened to be related to my wife's former lover, deliberately provoked Harry about the situation. It was the first time this issue had ever surfaced, catching Harry off guard. Derek's nephew ended up in the hospital, and I received a call to pick up Harry from school. He was suspended for 2 weeks and faced potential assault charges. Unfortunately, Jack witnessed the altercation and insisted on intervening to aid his brother. He ended up losing 2 teeth but earned Harry's admiration for his support. Upon bringing her sons home, Elena met us at the door. Harry immediately confronted his mother for not being honest with them about the events from years ago. Elena remained silent, offering no defense as her eldest son expressed his anger. Sensing the tension, I took Jack to the dentist, leaving them alone to address their issues. Jack didn't seem too bothered by his missing teeth, but I was concerned about the impending dental expenses. When we returned home, Elena was nowhere to be found. Her car remained parked, but she had left without a word or explanation, leaving Harry bewildered. I took a week off from work to try to calm things down and sort out the situation. Elena's parents and sister maintained their silence toward me. After a week passed with no word from Elena, her whereabouts or intentions remained a mystery. Bella and I made the decision to move into the house together. Initially, sharing a bed felt awkward, but surprisingly, the boys accepted the arrangement more easily than I had anticipated. One day, while I was at work, all traces of Elena or anything connected to her vanished from the house. I didn't inquire about what Bella did with it, nor did I have any desire to know. Bella seamlessly assumed all the responsibilities that Elena had once handled. To simplify things, I provided her with a few credit cards. It was peculiar to realize that I trusted my mistress more than my wife. I sold Elena's car and purchased a new one for Bella. Family gatherings became less tense with this new arrangement. Bella was happier, and my mother was overjoyed. Harry and Jack experienced no further issues at school, and Derek's nephew never returned. Despite these improvements, I was still legally married. After 2 months of uncertainty regarding Elena's whereabouts, I decided to take action and reported her as a missing person to the police. However, I framed it as a case of a runaway spouse, knowing I could use the report as evidence when filing for divorce, citing abandonment as grounds. I patiently waited 2 more months before submitting the divorce papers, aware that a year of absence was necessary for the divorce to be granted. I was planning ahead, strategizing for the future. Gradually, life in the household settled into a new rhythm. Harry and Jack adapted well to Bella's presence. Though they never referred to her as Mom, preferring to call her Bella, our dynamics improved significantly. We began to resemble a family more than we had in years. Then, unexpectedly, I received a final decree of divorce, freeing me from my marriage. 2 weeks later, Bella and I journeyed to Elkton and exchanged vows, solidifying our bond. With Harry graduating from school and joining the Air Force, and Jack enrolling in meat-cutting school in Toledo a year later, changes came swiftly. Before we knew it, Bella and I found ourselves alone. Despite our readiness to move forward, we never received any word from Elena, leaving her whereabouts and intentions shrouded in mystery. Mom and Dad made the move to Ocala, urging us all to promise to visit them at least twice a year. With no strong ties keeping us in Reading, Bella and I decided to return to our roots in Philly. Jack, after graduating from his school, found a position at a prestigious butcher shop in Westchester. We cherished the moments we spent with him, as he always had something delightful to share whenever we met. A year later, we found ourselves attending one of Bella's niece's weddings, a grand affair typical of Italian celebrations in the city of brotherly love. The event was teeming with guests, mostly family members, along with a sprinkling of opportunists seeking free drinks and food. Nevertheless, the festivities were lively and abundant. During the evening, I noticed Bella displaying a hint of unease, her gaze wandering across the dance floor on several occasions. Though I tried to spot what had caught her attention, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. However, when she excused herself to visit the restroom, a sense of apprehension washed over me. Observing her as she made her way to the back of the hall, I noticed her meeting up with one of her old friends. Amidst the chatter and socializing, Bella's behavior caught my attention. Instead of heading to the restroom as she initially claimed, she approached one of Luca's assistants, her gestures directed towards a nearby table. There sat 3 guys and 3 girls, looking like they were trying a bit too hard to impress. The girls were adorned in flashy attire, giving off an air of ostentation. Returning to our table, Bella wore a thoughtful yet composed expression. "Marco, we've got a slight issue. I gathered that much from your little reconnaissance mission. Care to elaborate?" "You need to stay calm. In a few minutes, one of the guys from Janet's table will come over here and try to provoke you." "What do you mean, provoke me?" "He'll likely say some offensive things about me to get a rise out of you. When you react, they'll jump in and attack you. And I'm supposed to just let that happen?" "Temporarily, yes. Wait until Thomas and the others are ready. You might need to fend off one of them, but that should be the extent of it." What exactly do you mean by play along with him? Let him insult me and then agree with him. If he calls me a prostitute, ask him how much he's willing to pay. Something like that. But whatever you do, don't let him provoke you. What's all this about? Why are these guys targeting me? Take a look at Janet's table. Okay. Focus on the woman with the short platinum hair. Got her. Look closer. Whoa, that's Elena. What's she doing here? Elena's boyfriend is somehow connected to the bride. It seems she's still holding a grudge against you, and she orchestrated this setup to get back at you when she saw you were here. I guess she's out for revenge. While you and Luca's crew handle things here, Janet and I will have a chat with Elena in the ladies' room. It's not going to be pleasant. I felt uneasy about the situation unfolding. This was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a memorable night for the bride. It wasn't right for a couple of thugs to spoil it. When I noticed Elena's companion rising from his seat, I stood up and made a polite excuse to the table. Bella shot me a curious glance, but seemed to grasp the situation. Nonchalantly, I strolled over to the side fire exit, where people were stepping out for a smoke. The boyfriend nodded to his companions, signaling them to follow. Unseen by them, 3 men emerged from the back of the bar, each wielding a Louisville slugger kept behind the counter. Outside, about half a dozen individuals were puffing away by the fire exit. With a firm tone, I instructed them to leave, and surprisingly, they complied without resistance. There must have been an urgency in my voice. I walked a short distance away and paused, then turned back. The trio emerged, initially smiling, but their expressions quickly soured as the door clicked shut behind them. Their grins vanished upon spotting the 3 bat-wielding figures and the bride's father waiting for them. The altercation ended swiftly, lasting no more than 30 seconds, and I didn't have to resort to violence. Apologies for any inconvenience caused to you and your family on this special evening, I expressed, feeling like a character straight out of a mob movie. Thank you for handling it discreetly, he responded, shaking my hand before returning to his daughter's side. After expressing gratitude to Luca's men for their assistance, I went inside to locate Bella. They remained behind to tidy up the aftermath. Sensing it was time to depart, I couldn't find Bella, and Elena's table was now deserted. Jack, having caught wind of the disturbance, approached me at the bar with some of his friends. Dad, what's going on? My initial instinct was to keep quiet, but it failed. Your mother was here with her new boyfriend. I don't need to hear more than that, he replied with a grin, ordering a beer from the bartender. We engaged in conversation about other topics for about an hour. Eventually, Bella appeared, looking a bit disheveled. Where have you been? I asked. She smirked mischievously. Janet and I had to accompany your ex-wife to the hospital. She wasn't feeling well. Jack and I couldn't help but chuckle. Marco, can we head home now? It was a long, eventful night, but filled with laughter. We never encountered Elena again. Bella and I remain happily together in our old neighborhood. Life couldn't be better. The second story. Around 7 years ago, Linda and I crossed paths and swiftly kindled a romance. Both hailing from a Midwest upbringing deeply rooted in devout Christianity, we shared values that prioritized God above all and cherished our family dearly. Our Sundays were spent in the warmth of church pews, envisioning a future filled with promise and togetherness. I, an accomplished engineer with a bright trajectory ahead, found myself drawn to Linda, who excelled in selling accounting software for a prominent tech firm based in Atlanta. Before our marriage, my parents generously gifted us a 3-bedroom home as a token of their success, a departure from the common practice of bequeathing assets posthumously. Their act of generosity brought them immense joy, reveling in the opportunity to share their blessings while still living. 5 years ago, Linda and I exchanged vows, embarking on a journey that felt like an eternal honeymoon. Our union was characterized by an abundance of love, manifesting in our intimate connection and unwavering devotion. Our bond was the envy of our friends, who marveled at the depth of our affection. Blessings continued to abound as we welcomed 2 beautiful, identical twin girls with flowing blonde locks into our lives. Parenthood transformed us as we poured our hearts and souls into nurturing our daughters and providing them with a nurturing and loving environment. Our lifestyle might have seemed mundane to some, but for us, it was deeply fulfilling. Most evenings were spent dining at home, reserving Friday and Saturday nights for outings, and Sundays were dedicated to church. We didn't chase after the social scene or follow fleeting fashion trends. Instead, Linda preferred conservative attire both at work and home, reserving anything more alluring for our private moments together. Trust and openness formed the cornerstone of our relationship. We shared everything, creating a rock-solid foundation for our marriage. Linda was naturally affectionate, showering me with tender touches, kisses, and warm embraces, which I cherished deeply. Our emotional connection was profound, and we found solace in sharing our innermost thoughts and feelings. While raising twins posed its challenges, I relished every moment spent with them. Though it could be demanding for Linda, I gladly stepped in to ease her burden and lend a helping hand whenever needed. Together, we formed a formidable team, resolving any issues that arose before they could escalate. With Linda by my side and our twin girls in our lives, contentment overflowed, making every day brighter and more fulfilling. Part 2. The Trade Show. Just a week prior to the annual trade show, Linda received an unexpected call, informing her that she was required to attend the 3-day event. With several colleagues out sick due to a virus, Linda was pressed into service despite her attempts to wriggle out of it. She expressed her apologies to me, lamenting the separation from our family. "Babe, I feel terrible about this. I hate leaving you and the girls for 3 days. I've pleaded with my boss, but they're really short-staffed. You know how much I hate being away," she explained, her concern evident. I watched as she packed for her trip, offering reassurances that we would manage just fine without her, though we would miss her dearly. With a heavy heart, I helped her with her luggage, seeing her off as she departed in the company's hired limo bound for the airport. Ours was a marriage built on trust and transparency. I never had reason to doubt Linda's fidelity. She was the epitome of a devoted spouse. Our bond was unbreakable, grounded in shared love for our children and a commitment to facing life's challenges together. So, when I received an unexpected text from my colleague and friend, Ben, during the second night of the trade show, it shook me to the core. He was attending a cybersecurity event in Atlanta at the time. "Hey John, how's your weekend going, buddy?" "I'm enjoying some quality time with my girls. Linda's away at a trade show, so it's just me and the kids. Aren't you at the security convention this weekend?" "Yeah, I am. You mentioned Linda's at a trade show, right? Do you happen to know which one?" "Yeah, she's in Atlanta this week, but I'm not exactly sure of the name. Her company's showcasing their products at the convention center. Why do you ask?" "Well, I'm at dinner with my group, and are you sitting down?" "Yeah, I am. What's going on, Ben?" Suddenly, my phone buzzed with 2 photos and a video, and I found myself rooted to my seat in disbelief. The first photo depicted Linda in an outfit I'd never seen her wear before, the shortest dress, paired with heels she rarely wore. Her hair and makeup were immaculate, and she looked breathtakingly beautiful. Initially, I thought it must be a doppelganger. There was no way it could be Linda. I chuckled to myself, wishing she would dress like that sometimes, but quickly dismissed the notion. My laughter ceased when the next photo arrived. A close-up of Linda seated intimately next to Leonard, one of her supervisors. My heart sank, and I couldn't tear my eyes away from the image. I desperately tried to find a rational explanation, but my hope waned as another close-up of Linda smiling at Leonard arrived. My heart shattered into a million pieces, but I clung to the faint hope of a reasonable explanation until another text came through a few minutes later. The video shattered my world into a million pieces. Seeing my wife, Linda, locked in an intimate embrace with Leonard, his hand on her breast, was like a punch to the gut. Tears streamed down my face, my heart raced, and a wave of sickness washed over me. As I tried to process the unimaginable betrayal, another text message arrived. "Dude, are you okay? What should I do?" Ben's concern echoed through the screen. "Can you still see her?" I asked, my voice strained. "Yes, I can," he replied. "I'm going to call her right now and just check in," I said, my hands trembling as I dialed Linda's number. The phone rang several times before diverting to voicemail. I left a composed message, masking the turmoil inside, and hung up. Next, I called Ben. I just tried calling her. What did she do? John, I'm so sorry about this. She took the phone out of her purse, glanced at the caller ID, and then put it back in. I can't believe it's her man. I've never seen her act like this or dress like that. I mean, I never realized how stunning your wife is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it like that. It's all right, Ben. Thanks for being honest and not keeping this from me. You're a good friend, I assured him, struggling to keep my voice steady. I'll handle things from here. Please try not to let her see you, if possible. Let me know if anything else happens, but don't risk your safety. I'll take it from here, my friend. Are you going to be okay? Ben's voice was filled with concern. No, I'm far from okay, but I know what I have to do. I'll take care of it. I'm still in shock, and it's going to take me some time to process everything, but I'll get there. Thanks again for being there for me. You're welcome. I love you, man. I'm here for you. Take care, Ben. Thanks again. I poured myself a stiff drink and sank into the darkness of the living room, grappling with the sudden collapse of my world in less than 20 minutes. I had been utterly clueless about any issues in our relationship. How long had this been going on? Had I been so oblivious that I failed to notice any signs? No, Linda had never given me any reason to doubt her. In fact, our relationship had felt stronger than ever over the past 6 months. Our intimacy had deepened, and our bond had grown stronger. None of this made any sense, and I struggled to comprehend it all. Over the next hour, Ben sent a few more photos and videos. Each one felt like a dagger to my heart. There was a video of them dancing intimately, his hand lingering on her backside, another of them locked in a passionate kiss on the dance floor, and a photo of them lost in each other's embrace, unaware of the world around them. It dawned on me that they must have been so consumed by their kiss that they hadn't even noticed the music had stopped. I knew our relationship had reached its breaking point, but there were still so many unanswered questions swirling in my mind. As an engineer and a natural problem solver, I slipped into analytical mode and spent the next few days devising a plan. Surprisingly, Linda called me at 10 p.m. after the last damning photo arrived. Taking a deep breath, I composed myself. I couldn't afford to let on that I knew anything about her betrayal. "Hi, honey," she greeted me, her voice filled with warmth. "I'm sorry I missed your call earlier. I was in a meeting during dinner and couldn't talk. I miss you terribly, baby, and wish I was there with you, under the covers, showering you with kisses." "I miss you too, Linda," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "I love you so much. Thanks for calling. The girls are adorable, and I'll send you some photos. They're really missing their mom and asking for you." I tried to rearrange my schedule to come home tomorrow, but my boss insisted I stay here. "I hate being away from you, darling." "We'll celebrate when you get back," I assured her. "Are you finished for the night?" "Yes, I'm getting ready for bed and gearing up for another long day at work. I love you, baby, and I'll call you tomorrow." "Good night, Linda. I love you more than you'll ever know," I said before ending the call, my heart breaking anew. My words were sincere. I truly loved her more than anything, and I desperately wished this nightmare would end. Unable to sleep, I lay awake in bed well past midnight, consumed by thoughts of where she might be and what she might be doing. My question was soon answered when another text from Ben arrived. It was a photo of Linda and Leonard on a couch in what appeared to be the hotel lobby. They were locked in a passionate embrace, his hand reaching up her short skirt, her arms wrapped around his neck. They looked like a pair of newlyweds, oblivious to the world around them as they flaunted their love in public. "Hey John, this is the last one for tonight. Looks like she's going to be pretty occupied. Let me know if you want me to intervene. I can put a stop to it right now. This is tough to see, but thanks for sending these photos. No, just let her go. This is her choice, and you don't need to get tangled up in it. Thanks again." With tears streaming down my face, I cried myself to sleep, grappling with the betrayal of the woman I loved, our marriage vows, and the impact on our daughters. Eventually, sleep enveloped me, briefly granting respite from the pain and tears until the next morning. Waking up to a barrage of loving texts from Linda adorned with hearts, kisses, and smiley faces, I was struck by the stark contrast between her affectionate messages and the reality of her actions. She professed her love and expressed how much she missed me and the girls, eagerly anticipating a passionate reunion upon her return. Her sweet and loving demeanor left me questioning whether she suffered from dissociative disorder or had been drugged. I desperately searched for answers, but ultimately, I knew I had to confront the harsh truth and prepare for what lay ahead. With her expected return in a few days, I couldn't afford to evade reality any longer. Despite the facade of normalcy in our conversations, I grappled with seething anger. Was it her infidelity that stung the most, or the web of deceit and lies she spun? The realization that she had played me for a fool cut as deep as witnessing her intimacy with Leonard. Fueled by Ben's revelations and the painful acknowledgement of my wife's betrayal, I sprang into action. Utilizing my technical expertise, I had discreetly installed software on Linda's phone, ostensibly for locating it in case of loss. But this software also boasted features like voice, text, and email recording, with automatic uploads to the cloud if triggered. Let me make it clear. I didn't install the software on her phone with the intention of spying on her, but in the wake of recent events, its utility became apparent. Prior to last night, I never would have considered invading her privacy, but my trust had been shattered irreparably. My priority now was to safeguard our daughters and salvage our marriage, if possible. Thankfully, the girls provided a welcome distraction, allowing me to focus on caring for them. Preparing breakfast, tidying up, and indulging in doll playtime were moments I cherished despite the exhaustion. Let me tell you, managing twin 3-year-olds is no joke. It's a serious workout. By 2 p.m., I finally managed to get them down for their nap after a hearty lunch. I took a quick shower, tidied up the house, and settled down to catch up on tasks. Linda's barrage of 6 affectionate texts promised a call at 5 p.m. after her workday concluded. After reading them, I accessed the cloud from my laptop, logging into her account to review everything recorded since activating the spying software. Shock washed over me as I delved into the messages exchanged with Leonard. Here are a few excerpts. "You were incredible last night, baby. Can't wait to relive it tonight. Thank you, kitten. I adore it. Shall we head back to my room after our meeting before dinner? Absolutely. But I need to check in with my hubby before we go. I should be ready by 5:15. Does your hubby suspect anything about us? Of course not. He believes I love him, and I'll ensure he continues to believe that. Our secret has remained hidden for over 6 months, and he's completely clueless. I know how to manage him, so don't worry. I had to halt my reading. Anger surged within me, threatening to engulf my rationality. Kitten, he called her kitten. That was my endearing term for her during our intimate moments. Had she shared that with him too? How blind had I been? What kind of fool had I become? After regaining a semblance of composure, I tentatively explored the other files, only to be met with further betrayal. The contents filled me with a primal rage that I could no longer contain. Slamming my laptop shut, I rose from my chair and screamed, the sound tearing through the air. Grabbing the lamp from the table, I hurled it against the wall with all my strength, shattering it into countless fragments. The anger I had suppressed for so long now consumed me entirely. I was poised to destroy the second lamp when the sound of my daughter's cries pierced through the chaos. Their tears shocked me back to reality, grounding me in the present. Hastily, I rushed to their side, cradling them in my arms until their sobs subsided. I allowed them to play in the living room while I sat on the chair, nursing another stiff drink, silently cleaning up the shattered glass from my outburst. In that moment, I accepted that my marriage was beyond salvaging. It was time to take decisive action. I lacked the strength to delve deeper into their conversations or examine any additional files. Instead, I allowed them to accumulate on the cloud. Deciding to play the role of the loving husband, just as Linda had deceitfully portrayed herself, I formulated a plan. My immediate course of action involved contacting a divorce lawyer and engaging a private investigator. Securing custody of my daughters became my paramount concern. They were the sole reason I clung to sanity in this tumultuous ordeal. During the 5 p.m. phone call, "Hi, baby. How are the girls?" I inquired. "They miss their mommy," Linda responded softly. "Oh my goodness, they're all I can think about all day long, and you, of course. I can't wait to hold you in my arms when I get home. I'm going to give you the warmest kiss you've ever received," she declared with affection. Playing along, I replied, "Oh baby, I've been thinking about you all day and can't wait to hug my loving wife." "Soon, baby. We'll be together again," she reassured me. Somehow, I managed to maintain my composure, and the call lasted exactly 15 minutes. At 5:15, Linda bid me farewell, saying, "I love you, John. I need to go now. The bus back to the hotel is leaving, and I have to catch it. I'll text you later. I love you." Yet another easily uttered lie. She was undoubtedly skilled in deception. "I love you too, baby. More than you'll ever know," I responded, my voice masking the bitterness and resentment that now engulfed me. The pain of her lies and infidelity had been replaced by a seething contempt, boiling anger, and a thirst for revenge. It was time to bring this woman to her knees and make her pay for her deceit. Despite my overwhelming love for her, this was the hardest decision I'd ever had to make. Part 3. Returning home. I picked her up at the airport, and as she threw her arms around me, delivering the promised kiss, I couldn't help but wonder whether she was an exceptional actress or genuinely loved me that much. Her behavior continued to baffle me. She spent an hour with the girls, reveling in their company. That night in bed, she showered me with affection, repeatedly expressing how much she missed me and the girls, lamenting her time away from us. She claimed that all she could think about was being together like this, holding each other in bed. Her tenderness and love were a stark contrast to the woman I had seen at the convention. In return, I reciprocated her affection, cherishing these moments with her. It was almost surreal, and part of me wished it could be genuine, as this was how I envisioned spending my life with her. Yet deep down, I knew it was all a facade, destined to crumble soon. I kept my newfound knowledge to myself, lavishing her with love and fulfilling her desires every night. To an outsider, our relationship would seem flawless, the envy of all. This charade continued for 3 months, during which I remained vigilant for any signs of infidelity. Yet there was nothing to suggest wrongdoing. She returned home from work at the same time every night, no suspicious phone calls or texts. At times I even entertained the thought that perhaps I had been mistaken and everything would eventually work out. Then I received a call from Mr. Howard, the private investigator, and arranged to meet him the following afternoon. Driving downtown to their office, I was ushered into their conference room. "Good afternoon, John. It's good to see you again," Mr. Howard greeted me. "Likewise, Mr. Howard," I replied, steeling myself for what was to come. "John, I wish I had better news, but unfortunately, I have to deliver some bad news. Are you prepared to see what we've discovered?" I sighed, steeling myself for what lay ahead. I had hoped for the best, but deep down, I knew the truth about Linda and Leonard. Mr. Howard placed a thick 3-ring leather binder on the table before me, filled with meticulously organized sections marked by tabs. Text messages, voice transcripts, video links, phone call transcripts, and photos. "Mr. Howard, before we delve into this, I must express my confusion. Over the past 3 months, I've kept a close eye on Linda's movements and schedule, and there hasn't been a single deviation. She has been the epitome of the perfect wife and lover, and none of this adds up," I confessed, my voice tinged with frustration. "Well, let's walk through it together and see if we can shed some light on the situation," Mr. Howard responded calmly. Unable to bear the weight of my own suspicions any longer, I had refrained from accessing the cloud files, clinging to the hope for a better outcome. Unfortunately, hope seemed increasingly futile. As Mr. Howard guided me through the contents of the binder, my heart sank. There were over 75 pages of incriminating text messages, 25 pages of damning emails, 75 pages of photos capturing Linda and Leonard entering and exiting hotel rooms, all meticulously time-stamped. Additionally, there were over 82 video links and 50 pages of recorded phone conversations. Linda and Leonard frequented this motel at least 4 times a week over the past 3 months, Mr. Howard explained solemnly. You can see photos of them arriving every day at 1 p.m., spending an average of 2 hours together during each visit. Furthermore, it appears that during the last month, 2 additional men visited your wife 4 times a week. Do you recognize this person? He inquired, gesturing to a photo displayed in the binder. Oh my God, that's Michael Nelson, the CEO of her company. So she's involved with 2 men, and one of them is the CEO. I gasped in disbelief. I'm afraid so. Based on the evidence from text messages, phone calls, and videos, it's evident that he was intimately involved with your wife, Mr. Howard confirmed gravely. The video labeled Balcony captures them engaging in intimate acts, seemingly unaware that they were being filmed. Our high-resolution 8K video allowed us to capture their faces and audio in close detail. He proceeded to play the video on the 80-inch display, revealing the disturbing scene of my wife with her CEO on the balcony. Witnessing their actions up close, I felt a wave of nausea engulf me, forcing me to excuse myself from the room momentarily to compose myself. Upon returning, I urged them to continue, steeling myself to confront the harsh reality of my wife's actions. Show me everything, I insisted, determined to uncover the extent of her betrayal. In the video labeled Balcony 2, your wife is seen with both Michael and Leonard. I apologize for the distress this may cause, but these videos could be crucial evidence in any divorce proceedings, particularly for custody arrangements, Mr. Howard explained as he played the footage. It was revolting, and I struggled to reconcile the images with the woman I thought I knew, desperately clinging to the hope that it was all a mistake. John, we also conducted background checks on Leonard Edwards and Michael Nelson, Mr. Howard continued, his tone somber. Leonard has been married for 10 years and has 4 young children, while Mr. Nelson has been married for 25 years and has 3 adult children. According to the text messages, Leonard invited Michael over after your wife expressed interest in exploring a threesome. It's a distressing revelation, so I'll leave you to review the details at your own pace. Here's the binder and a USB containing all the files and videos. Your attorney will likely require both for legal proceedings. When I first met with my attorney, she was astonished by the extensive amount of evidence we had gathered, finding it hard to believe there were no indications of her infidelity at home. She's still putting on the facade of the loving wife and mother, as if everything is perfectly normal, remarked my attorney after reviewing the files I provided. She outlined several courses of action we could take. Preferring to weigh our options carefully, she scheduled a follow-up meeting for the next week. However, I urged her to begin the divorce proceedings at the earliest opportunity. As I left her office, a gnawing sensation in my stomach confirmed what I already knew. It was over long before these consultations. Watching those videos extinguished any lingering hope of reconciliation. I found myself asking, who is this woman? Later that evening, after putting our daughters to bed, we settled on the couch to watch a film I'd selected on Netflix called Unfaithful. I've heard good things about this movie. Let's see if it lives up to the hype, I suggested, pressing play. Given the film's theme of marital infidelity, I saw an opportunity to broach a sensitive topic. During the movie, I casually mentioned to Linda that a coworker had been showing interest in me over the past few months. Can you imagine me with someone else? I chuckled. Her response was unexpected. With narrowed eyes, she warned, if I catch you even thinking about being with her, I'll make you regret it. You belong to me and no one else. Her tone was deadly serious, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Despite my attempts to keep the conversation lighthearted, she remained resolute, adamant that she wouldn't tolerate any form of betrayal. It was difficult to reconcile her vehement reaction with her own actions. That really bothers me, John. Why didn't you tell me about her sooner? What's her name? She pressed. Linda, calm down. She's just an intern, a young girl who likes to flirt. I ignore her completely. But what about you? You're the most attractive woman in your office. Surely someone there flirts with you, I countered. Of course not. They all know I'm married and that I would never cheat on you, she asserted defensively. So, in our entire marriage, you've never thought about being with another guy or did anything. I mean, even a friendly kiss. You've never cheated on me, baby. I cautiously broached the subject. Now she was really pissed. Are you kidding me? Did you really just ask me that? I constantly tell you how much I love you, I'm always with you, and I could never think of being with another man. You're an ass. I can't believe you asked me that, she retorted, her anger palpable. I apologized and agreed with her, attempting to diffuse the tension as we continued to watch the movie. I couldn't help but marvel at her acting skills. She was so convincing that for a moment, even I doubted myself. No wonder she excelled in her job, I mused silently. As things settled down, she snuggled back into my shoulder, and I seized the moment. I retrieved my phone, opened my text application, and selected the photo of Linda and Leonard hissing on the dance floor with his hand on her ass. I was engrossed in it when she noticed my distraction. What are you doing, John? Why aren't you watching the movie? She asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. Because what I'm looking at is more realistic, I replied cryptically. What are you talking about? She inquired, her curiosity piqued. I muted the movie and showed her the photo. She froze, attempting to formulate a response, but no words came out. I continued to gaze at the photo, breaking the tense silence. Wow, what a kiss you're giving Leonard. I can explain. Where did you get that photo? She stammered, her composure slipping. When you were at dinner with your friend, Ben Brown, he was at the same restaurant and saw you with that guy. He texted me to confirm if it was really you or a perfect lookalike. Well, it was you, and he sent this over. Also, I must say you look very attractive in that dress. I've never seen you in a dress so short or revealing. I guess you wanted to impress your friend. But go ahead, explain, I said, placing the phone back on my lap. Baby, we had one dance, and he had been drinking. When the song ended, he grabbed me and kissed me. What you don't see is right after that, I slapped him and made quite a scene. I would never let that happen. I did buy that dress for the business dinner, but I didn't realize how revealing it was until now. I'm so sorry, she offered, her voice trembling with remorse. Oh, I get it. That can happen. And that was the only time that happened. I asked, attempting to maintain a calm demeanor. Yes, baby, and he'll never do that again, she reassured me, her confidence faltering. As the movie continued, I reclined back, quietly observing Linda's anxious demeanor. After a few minutes, I retrieved my phone and opened the video of them on the couch, Leonard's hand discreetly exploring under her skirt. I noticed her expression shift to one of apprehension. What are you looking at now? She inquired, her voice trembling. Remember that night when you called me and said you had a long day and you were back in your room and going to sleep? I began, knowing the gravity of the situation. Yes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It's funny because I got another text from Ben 2 hours after your call, and this time it was a video. Want to see? I said, hitting the play button, revealing the compromising footage of her and Leonard kissing intimately. I can't wait to hear this explanation, I remarked with a wry smile. My anger had dissipated, replaced by a mixture of contempt and amusement at her reactions. Oh my God. John, I'm so sorry. After we spoke on the phone, Leonard called and said we had to discuss an issue with one of the accounts that we were meeting in the morning. He asked me to come down to the lobby to prepare for the meeting. I can barely remember this video because I had several drinks and got a little drunk. You know what I'm like when I'm drunk, she explained, her words rushed and panicked. I know the video looks bad, but nothing happened after that. I do remember going up to my room. I told him to stop, and I was happily married and left. Nothing happened, you have to believe me, she pleaded desperately. That's part of the problem, kitten, I interjected, deliberately emphasizing the name. I noticed her reaction, a blink of surprise, and continued. The problem is that I always believed you, but you've lied to me twice in the last 20 minutes about some serious shit. Can you see this from my side? I'm alone by myself, and the love of my wife is kissy face with her boss in 2 photos, wearing the sluttiest outfit she's ever worn. How do you think I feel, baby? John, I love you. That was 3 months ago. Why didn't you say something sooner? She pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. To be honest, I wanted to see if you would tell me yourself. I wanted to see if my wife was honest and transparent, as we've always been with each other. But now I understand how things are between us. Are you lying about anything else? Are you having an affair with him? Do you love him? I asked, confronting the uncomfortable truth head-on. I found myself toying with her emotions, relishing her confusion and the performance she put on. She began sobbing, reiterating her love for me. Linda, please stop telling me that you love me so much. I'm sure you do, and I still love you too, but that doesn't change the reality of these photos. I need to understand why, and if there's anything else you're not being honest about, I said, discreetly activating the voice recorder on my phone. John, listen to me. Nothing happened. Yes, I guess I kissed him like you saw, but that was it, and each time I told him to stop. I'm not sure what Ben saw or told you, but you have to believe me, she pleaded. Okay, stop crying, baby. I believe you. However, I'm puzzled by how you were dressed. You never wear anything like that for me, and you never do your hair and makeup like that either. Were you doing it for him? You didn't answer my question. Do you love him? Do you want to leave me for him, Linda? Please, I need to know the truth, I pressed, my tone unwavering. Her sobs resumed. No, John, I only love you. I never want to lose you. Nothing happened, and I don't know why I dressed like that. It's so unlike me. Maybe it was because all the other women dressed that way, and I wanted to look as good. I don't know. I was a little insecure, I guess. I suppose I can understand that, and it makes sense. But why didn't you tell me about Leonard and your intimacy? I inquired. Since nothing really happened, and I put a stop to it, I didn't want to upset you. He's my boss, and I couldn't afford to lose my job if anything happened. If something did happen, I would have told you right away. You know that, she explained. I kissed her and held her gently as she cried. That night marked just the beginning of a month-long scheme of revenge. As we made love, I couldn't help but feel detached, envisioning myself not as her husband, but as one of her partners. Her performances were Oscar-worthy, but I had grown indifferent to her theatrics. Night after night, she poured out her declarations of undying love, each one more convincing than the last. I found myself merely spectating, detached from the emotional turmoil she was trying to stir. The following morning, I couldn't resist checking the cloud for any correspondence between her and Leonard, and true to form, there it was. Oh my God! Someone took photos of us at the convention and sent them to John. His friend was at the restaurant and saw me without John. I'm not sure if he knows, but the video showed us kissing while sitting on the couch in the lobby. Holy shit. Now that you mention it, I remember some guy with a phone across from us watching, but I didn't think anything of it. What did John do? Nothing. I convinced him nothing had happened, and I stopped you. He has no clue that I spent the night in your room. I'll convince him it was the alcohol and make it up to him. He's easy to convince. Be careful, babe. We're on for tomorrow. I'll meet you there at 1 p.m. as usual. I can't wait. It's been too long. Love you, baby. Love you too, kitten. That was the last message, leaving me sitting in silence, processing the betrayal. Yes, I had been the world's biggest fool, but vengeance was a dish best served cold, and I was relishing every moment. I took my time, reveling in Linda's elaborate charade, curious to see how many more lies she would spin. First order of business, financial security. I discreetly rearranged our funds, closing accounts, and consolidating assets. I left the main Visa card active, but with a measly $2,500 limit, a precautionary measure to curb any potential financial recklessness on her part. Linda, oblivious to my mounting resentment, never suspected a thing. I consulted with the attorney, ensuring that since the house was mine prior to our marriage, I had every right to remain there once she was served. And then there was the piece de resistance, the infamous email, meticulously crafted with incriminating videos, damning text messages, and compromising photos, ready to be unleashed upon her unsuspecting friends, family, and colleagues. I decided to extend my revenge beyond just my personal sphere. With the help of my private investigator, I replicated the thick 3-ring binders filled with evidence for both Mrs. Nelson and Mrs. Edwards, the wives of Leonard and Michael respectively. I intended to share my agony with them, sending these packages out simultaneously with the serving of legal notices and filing of cases. My attorney and I devised a strategy to pursue public civil suits against Leonard, Linda's boss, and Michael, the CEO of the tech company. Given the prominence of the company on the East Coast, the involvement of its CEO promised significant legal leverage. We aimed to propose a settlement before going public with allegations of sexual harassment by executives. In parallel, we collaborated with child services attorneys to secure full custody of our children, meticulously preparing the required paperwork and compiling a comprehensive investigation binder. Despite the turmoil brewing beneath the surface, our daily routine with the kids remained seemingly normal. We shared meals, engaged in family activities, all while tiptoeing around the unspoken tension. My deliberate silence regarding the damning evidence must have been maddening for Linda, leaving her in suspense about my thoughts. I decided to inject a bit of amusement into the situation by posing some pointed questions. So Linda, has your boss made any advances since the convention? Anything you want to share? I already knew from her exchanges with Leonard that their illicit rendezvous continued unabated at the hotel. It was intriguing to observe how effortlessly she lied, and I found myself becoming adept at predicting her responses. With a composed demeanor, she replied, "No, nothing of the sort. It's strange, really. We both maintain a professional demeanor, as if nothing ever transpired between us. And truthfully, nothing substantial did. He's been entirely focused on work, and our interactions have been strictly business due to our busy schedules." Part 4. Papers served. That afternoon, the sheriff made an unexpected appearance at the offices of Tricom International, demanding to see Mr. Nelson. Shortly after, Sheriff Clark entered Nelson's office and handed him an envelope. "Mr. Nelson, you've been served." Alone in his expansive office, Nelson felt a wave of fear wash over him as he read the contents of the envelope repeatedly. Without hesitation, he instructed his secretary to summon Michael to his office. Meanwhile, Michael had just been served with his own complaint by the same sheriff. Rushing to Nelson's office, they both stood there, stunned and bewildered. "What the hell happened, Michael? If my wife finds out about this, I'll be finished. This is on you. You assured me that this woman wouldn't expose us. You better fix this, or I swear I'll make you and your family pay dearly. Do you understand?" Nelson was known as a formidable figure, a shrewd individual who had clawed his way to the top of the company. He wasn't about to let a scandal involving this woman jeopardize everything he had built. He made it clear to Michael that he expected swift resolution or consequences would follow. Fearing Nelson's wrath, Leonard hurried out of the office, intending to confront Linda on the 12th floor. As Leonard made his way down the hallway toward Linda's office, he encountered the sheriff heading in the opposite direction, coming from Linda's direction. Alarmed, he hastened into her office to find her sitting at her desk, tears streaming down her face. She was inconsolable, unable to speak coherently. John had just shattered her world, much like she had destroyed his months ago. It took over an hour for Linda to compose herself enough to articulate what had transpired. Even then, her words were fragmented and strained. "Linda, what's going on? How did he find out about everything?" "What do you mean? I've just been served divorce papers." "What are you talking about, everything?" "Nelson and I have been served, and we're facing a civil lawsuit for what happened. We don't know what evidence John has, but it must be more than those 2 images you saw. You need to get John to back off, or Nelson will destroy us and my family. Oh God, this is terrible. This is a nightmare. Please, go talk to him, make him see reason, do whatever it takes to stop this. Go home and sort this out. Call me tonight if you can, and let me know what's going on." Still trembling, Linda packed up her belongings and drove home. The realization that the man she loved, her husband and the father of her children, was intending to divorce her hit her like a ton of bricks. She didn't want a divorce, and she genuinely loved John, but she couldn't seem to resist the allure of the sexual excitement she found elsewhere. She had to make John understand. She couldn't bear to lose him over this. Arriving home to an empty house, she called John's sister and asked if she could keep the kids overnight. Without questioning, Kathy agreed to take them for the night. Linda took a shower, freshened up her hair and makeup, and waited anxiously for John to return from work. At 6 o'clock, she heard the garage door open and nervously awaited his entrance. "Hi, Linda. I didn't expect to see you tonight. I assumed you'd be with Leonard." "Oh, wait, he's married and has children, so I guess that might be awkward," John remarked casually. "John, please, let's talk," she said, taking his hand and leading him to sit beside her on the couch. Despite the turmoil inside her, Linda appeared composed and more put together than usual. She knew John expected this and continued to play the game. "John, I was served today, as you already know. But do you understand that I don't want a divorce? I need you and I love you. I won't sign those papers. Leonard means nothing to me. Yes, we were together, but it wasn't love. I needed it, and I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again, I promise." "Oh, you promise. I guess I can trust you now, so yes, I'll just forget everything, and we can go back to normal," I said with a loving smile. Linda grabbed me and kissed me passionately. "Thank you, baby. I love you so much. I'm glad you forgive me and understand. I'll never lie to you again." Her response caught me off guard. I was certain she sensed my sarcasm. I recoiled and pushed her away. "You're out of your mind, woman. I can never trust you again. After all your lies and deceit, I have nothing left. I gave you so many chances, but you kept lying, deceiving me, and ruining our lives. I know everything, your daily lunch meetings at the hotel with your bosses. Did you really think I would take you back after what you've been doing? Have you even thought about the damage you're doing to the girls? There's no way I can overlook this. But you have to. And why are you going after Nelson and Leonard? Well, your buddies are also the manager and CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. After I dump your ass, I'll need money to support the girls properly. And since they are partly responsible for destroying our marriage and my life, I am going to bring them down as well. I intend to destroy their family, hurt them financially, and ruin them." Linda had never heard me talk this way, and she'd never seen me so angry and focused. The seriousness of the situation finally hit her, and she realized that she no longer had control of the situation or her husband. All she could do now was beg. So, with tears streaming down her face and on her knees, she clutched my legs and begged for forgiveness. Despite feeling sorry for her, my rage overcame any sense of weakness, and I lifted her back to the couch. In a soothing voice, I spoke to Linda as if she were a child. "Listen to me, Linda. You need to pack a bag and go to your mom's house for a few nights. Get an attorney, and then we can set up a meeting to discuss things. In the meantime, a word to the wise, I suggest you stay clear of Michael and Leonard. Things are about to get ugly." Later that night, at her mom's house, Linda explained that she and John had a small argument, and she needed to stay with her for a few days. At 11 p.m., she dialed Leonard's cell. Leonard quickly added Michael into a three-way call. "Michael, are you there? Leonard, Linda, are you there?" "Yes, we're here," they both responded. Nelson initiated the conversation, so, "Linda, did you get him to back off on the lawsuits and the divorce?" "No, in fact, he kicked me out and warned me to watch out because it's going to get ugly," Linda replied tearfully. Nelson exploded. "Jesus Christ, Leonard, what have you done? I swear I will have you and Leonard killed if my family finds out about this. I don't care what you do, but make this go away." Linda sobbed. "There's nothing I can do. He's out of control and won't listen to anything I say. He's not even taking my calls or answering my texts." Nelson directed, "Leonard, you need to fix this. Set up a meeting with John, have him meet us somewhere, a bar, loud, and the noisier the better. Linda, you will be there as well, and you will ask him to back off the lawsuit in front of us. If he says no, then Leonard and I will explain how unhealthy it would be for him and his family if he doesn't back off. I have people on retainer to fix things like this, and I won't hesitate to use them to save this from becoming a complete shit show. Leonard, you understand what you need to do." "Yes, Mr. Nelson." "Linda, you know what you have to do, right?" "Yes, Mr. Nelson." "Get it done and make it happen tomorrow afternoon. We don't have any time to waste. Get a meet tomorrow." Nelson abruptly ended the call. Linda and Leonard hung up a few minutes later, contemplating the situation. That night, when John listened to the call, he wasn't surprised by their desperation and put his own plan together. As expected, the next morning Leonard called John and requested a meeting to discuss a settlement. He suggested meeting at the yard house at 6 p.m. that evening. John agreed and was at his private investigator's office at 4 p.m., getting wired up for the meeting with Leonard. They were using the latest technology with noise-canceling technology to focus on voice frequency to get clear audio, even in a noisy setting. The PI would also be there to film the meeting as a backup to the event. John walked in at 6:15, purposely keeping them waiting and giving his private investigator time to set up the video camera discreetly. Spotting Linda among them, he strode over to the group. "Linda, surprised to see you here with your partners in crime. I guess that clarifies where your loyalties lie. Gentlemen, what's the agenda? Why the rendezvous?" Nelson stepped forward. "John, I'm Michael Nelson, and I initiated this meeting." "Ah, so you're Nelson. You look quite different in person. Those videos really don't capture your essence." "Can't say it's a pleasure to meet you," John retorted. "Understandable given the circumstances. This is Leonard Edwards," Nelson introduced. "Ah, Leonard, the man who had an affair with my unfaithful wife and shattered my marriage." "Can't say it's a pleasure to meet you either," John replied sharply. Nelson continued, "I don't blame you for your anger. If I were in your shoes, I'm not sure how I'd react, but we need to discuss this." "Go on, then. What's on your mind?" John said, maintaining his composure. "We're asking you to drop the lawsuits against me, Leonard, and the company," Nelson proposed. John chuckled. "Is that all?" "No, I can't do that. Someone has to be held accountable for tearing apart the most crucial aspects of my life." Turning to Linda, he added, "The woman I loved and the mother of my children. I can't fathom a future with her after what she's done." Linda began to weep, realizing the gravity of her actions. "What do you want in exchange for dropping the cases and reconciling with Linda?" Nelson inquired. "Firstly, no amount of money could ever compensate for the betrayal I've endured, but here are my terms. I demand a $5 million settlement and a meeting with both your wives and Linda, where you confess everything you've done. If you agree to these conditions, I'll consider dropping the cases," John stated firmly. "Damn it, John. I'll offer $100,000, and you must sign a non-disclosure agreement to keep this quiet. My family can't be exposed to this, and if they find out, I'll make sure you disappear." Linda provided us with all the details of your daily routine, making it easy to erase you from the picture. "Let's try again," Nelson threatened in a low tone. John's smile widened as he calmly took a sip of his drink, leaving Nelson visibly shocked. "Well, I could reduce the amount to $4 million, but your families must be informed of your actions," he stated firmly. Nelson was dumbfounded. "John, you're sealing your own fate here. Think about it. Drop the charges and reconcile with Linda. It was just an affair. We can move past this," he pleaded. Ignoring Nelson's pleas, John swiftly retrieved his phone. With deft fingers, he sent 2 texts and then composed an email, sending it off without hesitation. In an instant, all the incriminating evidence, videos, images, texts, and messages were en route to Linda's entire circle: friends, family, and colleagues. The 2 texts John sent were directed to the courier stationed outside Michael and Jonathan's residences, instructing them simply, deliver the package. Within moments, Mrs. Nelson and Mrs. Edwards found themselves in possession of duplicate copies of the damning evidence, a meticulously compiled binder detailing every aspect of the affair. John made sure to include a particularly damning screenshot on Nelson's folder, Michael grinning maliciously as he lay next to Linda in bed. As for Mrs. Wilkes, a snapshot of Linda, Michael, and Leonard together adorned the cover, a provocative choice that would undoubtedly make an impression. Frustrated by John's apparent indifference, Nelson exploded in anger. "Hunter, for God's sake, pay attention. What's your answer? Will you drop the charges?" With a steely gaze, John retorted, "My response to you, Michael, Leonard, and my unfaithful wife is simple. Go to hell." As Michael and Leonard's phones began to ring incessantly with calls from their wives, a sense of panic and disbelief swept over them. Nelson's face flushed red with anger as he glared at John with intense hostility. Leonard, on the verge of tears, looked at John with a mixture of shock and bewilderment. Linda turned to John, her expression a blend of confusion and concern, seeking an explanation for the chaos unfolding. John calmly responded, his tone tinged with resolve. "Just check your email in a few minutes, and it will all become clear." After Nelson's heated exchange with his wife on the phone, he jabbed his finger into John's chest, his threat dripping with malice. "You're a dead man, Hunter. I'll ensure you suffer a painful demise." Ignoring Nelson's threat, John turned to Leonard, incredulous at his question. "Why? Seriously. You've been sleeping with my wife for the past 6 months, betraying me and jeopardizing my family. And now you're surprised that there are consequences. Everything I've sent to your wife was to expose the truth and protect her from the deceitful predator you've become." With that, John stood firm, refusing to be swayed by their pleas or threats. He had exposed their duplicity and was prepared to face whatever consequences would follow. Linda's phone erupted with calls from her relatives, each having seen the incriminating videos and photos John had distributed. With growing indignation, she denied any knowledge of what they were referring to before reluctantly opening her email to confront the truth. As she scrolled through the damning evidence, her anger flared, and she fixed a furious gaze on John. "You bastard! How could you do this to me?" she seethed, her voice trembling with rage. John met her fury with a somber resolve. "You made it far too easy, babe," he replied, his tone tinged with sadness. "I did love you, but now it's over. And once I hand over this audio recording from our meeting to the authorities, my lawyer believes I'll have full custody of our daughters. You'll be fortunate if you avoid jail time." He couldn't help but add a bitter note of irony. "Sorry, Kitten. Yes, Kitten, the nickname you shared with your partner in betrayal. I know everything, Princess, and now you must face the consequences of your actions." Epilogue. 6 months later. To avoid further public scrutiny, Tricom opted to settle the lawsuit with John Hunter, offering a hefty payout of $2.25 million. In the aftermath, Michael Nelson faced the consequences of his actions, stripped of his CEO title and terminated without severance due to breaching the morality clause in his contract. He suffered significant financial losses, forfeiting over $10 million in stock options and a $5 million severance package, all for the sake of his affair with John's wife. Nelson's downfall didn't end there. He received a 5-year prison sentence for his involvement in a murder conspiracy, along with other charges uncovered during the investigation into his business dealings. Divorced by his wife during his incarceration, he emerged from prison destitute, with no familial support and nowhere to turn. The news of Nelson's downfall brought a sense of satisfaction to John, a glimmer of relief amid the turmoil he had endured. Meanwhile, Leonard Edwards faced similar repercussions. His marriage dissolved, leaving him financially depleted and burdened with child support and alimony payments. Ordered to pay a hefty sum of $1 million as restitution in the civil trial for his role in the conspiracy and adultery, Leonard's life unraveled further. Jobless and reduced to working as a day laborer, he eventually succumbed to bankruptcy, finding himself homeless and living beneath an overpass near the day workers' pickup location. For John, witnessing the downfall of his wife's paramour brought a sense of closure and vindication. Despite the pain he had endured, knowing that those who had wronged him faced their own reckoning offered a semblance of solace, and he couldn't help but find himself smiling more frequently, a rare glimmer of peace amidst the chaos. Linda faced the consequences of her actions with a reduced sentence of 1 year of house arrest and 4 years of probation for conspiracy, thanks to John's intervention. However, she lost custody of her children, as John was granted full custody due to the evidence presented during the divorce proceedings. With no place to live, no alimony, and no child support due to her previous earnings being on par with John's, Linda found herself in a state of despair. She retreated to her mother's basement, abandoned by her family and stripped of her visitation rights. The email John sent, containing incriminating evidence of Linda's affair and deceitful behavior, shattered any remaining support Linda had. Her family turned their backs on her, exacerbating her feelings of isolation and guilt. Plagued by remorse, Linda struggled with her mental health, spending time in psychiatric hospitals as she grappled with the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, John focused his energy on caring for his children, now the center of his world. With the financial security provided by the settlements, he dedicated himself to his role as a single parent, supported by his sister and mother. Though the girls faced challenges stemming from their mother's actions, they had a strong support network to guide them through the ordeal. For John, while revenge provided a temporary sense of satisfaction, it could never fully mend the wounds inflicted by Linda's betrayal. Though he forgave her, the trust and love he once had for her had been irreparably damaged. The experience left him cautious and guarded, hesitant to open his heart again. Reflecting on the ripple effects of one person's actions, John acknowledged the importance of vigilance in navigating life's complexities. The third story. Mary stumbled her way home well past 2 in the morning on Saturday. Her Friday evening had kicked off right after work, as she and a few friends decided to kickstart the weekend at their favorite bar. They indulged in more than a few drinks and danced the night away until the combination became overwhelming for Mary. Grateful that she hadn't driven, she knew Darren would have been her designated driver yet again, subjecting her to his lectures all the way home. Being out late had become a common occurrence for her over the past year or so. As she made her way down the dark hallway, barely able to put one foot in front of the other, Mary contemplated her husband's probable sleeping state. It wouldn't be beneath her to make enough noise to rouse him from his slumber. In fact, she relished the idea. With a drunken smirk still adorning her face, she acknowledged her growing bitterness. Ascending the stairs, she bypassed the guest room without a glance and continued her unsteady journey. By the time she reached the master bedroom, she was using the wall for support. Pushing the door open with her foot, she was surprised to find the bedside lamp illuminated, and even more surprised to discover the bed empty. Where the hell is he? Her mind demanded, prompting her legs to move towards the bathroom instinctively. After a thorough search of the upstairs yielded no sign of him, she descended the stairs, her heart pounding. A faint glow emanated from the kitchen, leading her to believe he might have drifted off at the table while waiting for her. No such luck awaited her. Instead, she found the hood light above the stove left on, further fueling her frustration. "He's going to catch an earful when he finally shows up," she muttered angrily. As she scanned the clutter on the counter, she debated leaving it for the morning, but a glint of something shiny caught her eye. Driving a high-top chair closer, she slumped into it and examined the object she had picked up, Darren's wedding ring. The weight of it in her hand only intensified her growing unease. Beneath it lay a jumble of documents, her passport, what appeared to be a ticket of some sort, and a sealed envelope. Glancing at the time on her watch, 2:30, she contemplated waiting for Darren to return and provide some explanation. With a heavy sigh, she rested her head on her folded arms and succumbed to sleep within moments, the mystery of Darren's absence still looming over her. Mary couldn't recall how she ended up on the floor, but the impact jolted her awake, despite her intoxicated state. Rubbing her face groggily, she glanced at her watch, 5:45. Anger surged within her as she realized Darren had returned home and left her slumbering on the counter. Determined to confront him, she stormed up the stairs, but once again found the bedroom empty upon arrival. This time she moved with purpose, swiftly descending the stairs and flipping on the overhead light in the kitchen, flooding the room with brightness. Confusion mingled with frustration as she swung open the door to the garage, only to find Darren's car still absent. Her gaze returned to the counter, where the pile of items remained untouched. Examining her passport, she noted the outdated photo, realizing she hadn't used it in years. The airline ticket to Florida puzzled her further, and her curiosity piqued as she tore open the envelope bearing her name. Racing to retrieve her reading glasses from the night table, she returned to the kitchen, clutching the letter in hand, and settled onto a stool at the counter to unravel the mystery before her. Dear Mary, if you're reading this, you've undoubtedly discovered that I'm not at home, and you've come across everything I've left behind for you. You've probably heard it in bars, especially over the past couple of years. About 30 minutes before closing time, they'll announce last call. Well, my dear wife, consider this your last call. I'm sure you won't be shocked to hear me say that our marriage hasn't been working for quite some time. I wish I could say I'm willing to let it limp along as it has been for the past few years, but that's not in the cards. As I see it, we have two options. Option 1. You can muster the courage to gather up those documents and join me for a tough week of trying to salvage what's left of our relationship. If you choose this path, I'll be there to meet you when you arrive, and we can take it from there. Option 2 isn't as pleasant. We part ways, divide everything equally, and put an end to what has sadly become a charade of a marriage. I can't say I wouldn't prefer option 2, but because there's still some semblance of feeling left, albeit not much, I'm willing to give it one last shot. I won't delve into a lengthy analysis of how we reached this point or whose fault it may be. I'll simply say that I can't continue down the path you've chosen for us. Mary paused in her reading, glancing around the room with disbelief. Surely this had to be some sort of joke. Darren wouldn't have the nerve to follow through with what he had penned. Any moment now, she expected him to walk through the door, sheepishly seeking forgiveness, as he always did. This is the gratitude I receive for being lenient with him, Mary mused bitterly. If he believes he can intimidate me with the threat of divorce, he's sorely mistaken. Despite her irritation, she resolved to continue reading his foolish letter, reasoning that she had already invested this much time into it. Mary, we shared many wonderful moments in the past and have raised 2 incredible children together. However, as the saying goes, staying in a troubled marriage just for the sake of the children isn't sustainable. Our kids are grown now, forging their own paths with the people they've chosen. I believe that if we're both willing to make some compromises, we can rediscover the love and connection we had when we first met. It won't be simple, but it's essential if we want our marriage to endure. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! She muttered, flinging the letter onto the counter. I gave that man everything I had, and now he has the audacity to say it's not enough. I swear on my life, he'll pay for this when he walks through that door, Mary declared to the empty room. If he had even an ounce of backbone instead of being a spineless coward, maybe I wouldn't have to constantly push him. If it weren't for me, he'd still be stuck as a lowly rub salesman instead of climbing the corporate ladder like he has. He should be groveling at my feet instead of issuing ultimatums. Who does he think he is? And who does he think he's talking to? His damn mother. Mary's agitation grew, as it often did when Darren failed to meet her expectations. With a huff, she returned to reading the letter. As mentioned, Mary, I'll be there to meet you at the plane, ready to embark on the journey of rebuilding our lives together. However, it's crucial that you ensure you're on that plane. Mary glanced at the ticket in disbelief. There's no way I can catch that flight. It leaves in just 3 hours, she exclaimed, checking her watch. Mr. High and Mighty will be in for a surprise when I'm not on that plane, she muttered, twirling his wedding ring on the counter. And as for this ring, he won't be getting it back so easily. He'll have to earn it, she smirked, envisioning the tasks she'd make him undertake. When the ring slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor, she simply left it there, feeling drained. After a night of revelry with her friends, all she craved was sleep. Dealing with her husband could wait until she was ready. Unaware of the consequences outlined in the letter, Mary didn't bother to read further. If she had, she would have seen a series of events already set in motion, beginning in just a few short hours. Later that morning, nursing a cup of coffee at the kitchen table and swearing off alcohol, Mary was startled by the arrival of Darren's 2 brothers, Frank and James, who entered through the front door. "Excuse me, but you 2 can't just barge into my house, even if you are Darren's brothers," Mary snapped, eyeing Frank and James as they entered. "Take your time finishing your coffee. We're just here to collect a few things my brother asked us to grab," Frank retorted, shooting a disdainful glance at his sister-in-law. "Fine, go ahead. And make sure to inform him that he's in for a world of trouble when he gets back," Mary shot back sharply. They didn't bother responding, simply dashing upstairs with a box of black trash bags. 3 quick trips later, they were gone, not uttering another word to Mary. They could have at least said thank you, Mary grumbled to herself, draining her second cup of coffee and contemplating whether to have breakfast or lunch, glancing up at the clock. After a late lunch, she went shopping with her friends, and since Darren wasn't around, they ended up making a night of it again. But she never made it home. She awoke on Kelly's couch Sunday afternoon, praying for relief from her pounding headache. For the second time in 2 days, she swore off alcohol, though she knew it would only last until she sobered up and felt better. Darren's probably at home right now, wondering where the hell I am. Let him stew in his own worry, she thought, before drifting back to sleep. Despite her initial spiteful intentions, Mary realized she couldn't stay over at Kelly's on Sunday night. The looming Monday morning work schedule and the lack of spare clothes at her friend's place compelled her to return home. As she stepped into the still empty house, Mary's anger resurfaced. "He can try to avoid me all he wants, but he can't escape forever," she muttered to herself, already plotting her next moves for when she finally confronted Darren. Sunday night passed quietly, too quietly for Mary's liking. As she lay in bed reading, her thoughts unexpectedly drifted towards Darren, albeit not in a hostile manner for once. Maybe I'll cut him some slack when he returns. It's been a while, and I know how much he enjoys pleasuring me, she pondered, feeling a stir deep within her. Not love, per se, but a sensation akin to the satisfaction she felt after Darren had brought her to climax. She awoke late on Monday morning, her book still resting on her lap. Monday morning was chaotic. Without Darren's usual prodding, Mary found herself running late for work, arriving half an hour behind schedule. The day passed in its usual flurry of activity, and it wasn't until Kelly inquired about Darren's tardiness that Mary's attention was drawn to his absence. At 10:54, Mary was approached by a man in a suit who handed her an envelope without a word. "Mrs. Mary Gray, you've been served," he stated simply before turning on his heel and exiting the premises. "He's crossed a line," Mary seethed internally. "That little jerk is going to pay dearly for humiliating me like this," she raged, scanning her surroundings to gauge who might have witnessed the encounter. During lunch, Kelly and Mary perused the contents of the envelope. "He's not asking for much," Kelly remarked, flipping through the 5-page document. 50% of the savings, his $401, and you get to keep the house. It seems like he just wants out." "He's not getting a damn thing," Mary declared venomously, unleashing the bitterness usually reserved for Darren. "By the time I'm finished with him, he'll regret ever crossing me." During lunch, Mary logged into their online bank accounts and was shocked to discover that 50% of their funds had been withdrawn. When she contacted the bank, they informed her that Darren had made the withdrawal, and they had no record of any additional accounts in his name. It was clear to Mary that he had taken the money and opened a new account elsewhere. On her way home from work, Mary stopped by another bank and opened a new account in her name only. "Two can play this game," she thought, determined to protect herself. Arriving at her empty house, Mary poured herself a generous glass of wine and made her way to the kitchen. There, she retrieved Darren's letter and the other items left on the counter 2 days prior. With renewed interest, she reread the letter from where she had left off. "Mary, if you choose not to board that flight, then I'll take it as my answer, and the following steps will be set in motion. I've already taken what belongings I wanted from the house, leaving aside only the remainder of my clothes. My brothers will arrive sometime on Saturday to retrieve whatever else remains. On Monday, you'll be served with the divorce papers I had prepared months ago. As I mentioned, this is your final opportunity, and if you're not with me by Saturday, then it's the end. I'll strive to be fair, but if you decide to contest it, things could turn ugly, and I'm sure neither of us wants that. Regarding our children, they've been aware for some time that our marriage has existed in name only, so they shouldn't be too shocked. As for our families, well, they're likely surprised we've lasted this long. That's all I have to say until we meet face to face, or not. If not, I genuinely wish you a good life, and despite everything, I harbor no ill will towards you. My hope is that you find whatever brings you happiness. Your husband, Darren." Mary's initial reaction to the airline ticket and accompanying documents was a resounding shit. On Sunday morning, thousands of miles away, Darren lounged in a chair, engrossed in the new gadget he had purchased the previous week. "I'm sorry," Peggy said, glancing at Darren. "Don't be. It's mostly my fault. If I hadn't given in to her all these years and stood my ground, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess now. Then again, who knows? At this point, I don't even care. I'm just relieved it's finally over, Darren replied, scrolling through the iPad menu in search of the books he had downloaded earlier. Did you really think she would come? Peggy inquired. No, but I promised my kids I'd give it one last shot, Darren admitted, his attention still fixed on the screen. You're just happy we won't be needing both cabins anymore. Well, if you want, we can alternate cabins every night. That way we'll always have a fresh bed to mess up, Peggy teased, pulling Darren close and planting a kiss on him, tinged with more than a hint of passion. Peggy had worked alongside Darren for the past decade, witnessing his gradual decline in happiness within his marriage. Her own husband had passed away 8 years prior, and Darren had become a source of comfort for her during her moments of frustration. He had been a supportive friend, offering reassurance that things would improve with time and extending an open ear whenever she needed to vent. He had become her confidant and sounding board. Yet Darren wasn't always gentle and agreeable. There were times when he had to give her a reality check. Your husband may have passed away, but you're still alive. Randy wouldn't have wanted you to give up on life. Grieve for him, yes, but then move forward. You're young, attractive, and have a lot to offer. Any man would be lucky to have you, he had told her once. It felt like a lifetime ago. The card she had given him 3 years ago had only 2 words on it: thank you. It was left unsigned on his desk, but Darren knew exactly who it was from. 2 years ago, their roles reversed. Peggy started listening to Darren's troubles and offering her advice when asked. There was never anything physical between them, although Peggy knew she would have jumped at the chance. They became close friends who relied more and more on each other. 9 months ago, Darren came into work on Monday fuming with anger. It was all about Mary, her complaints, her ingratitude, and he was done with her. Still, Peggy stood by, offering advice, but Mary's behavior crossed a line. It got so bad that Peggy was ready to take drastic action to ease Darren's suffering. Then, out of nowhere, Darren made an unexpected offer: a 1-week paid vacation on the Carnival Glory. However, there was a catch. They'd have separate cabins. Peggy was puzzled. This cruise is my last attempt to salvage whatever's left of my marriage, although I'm almost certain Mary will let it slip through her fingers like everything else, Darren confessed to Peggy. Even if she decides to join me, I want you there on the ship in the other cabin to help me come to terms with the fact that it's over. Peggy smiled, expressing her eagerness to accompany him, and they made the arrangements together. At Southwest Airline Gate number 26, they waited together. When the pilot and crew finally disembarked, Darren felt a wave of relief. Without a second thought, he grabbed a shocked Peggy and kissed her, first lightly and then with a passion he had harbored for years. I've wanted to do that for years, he admitted, stealing another kiss before declaring they had a boat to catch. After checking into their respective rooms, they sat on deck, marveling at the offerings of the next 7 glorious days. Darren switched Peggy's dinner table reservation, and they opted out of booking any excursions. Maybe on our next cruise, Peggy suggested with a smile. They spent the day exploring the ship, enjoying a delightful dinner, and dancing the night away at the clubs. As it approached 1 a.m., they reluctantly addressed the sleeping arrangements. For the first night, they slept separately in their own cabins. This is the last time I'll ever sleep alone, Darren declared to Peggy over breakfast. As he slid a promise ring onto her finger, he vowed to take it one day at a time until the divorce was finalized. Peggy felt like she was walking on air, her head in the clouds. When they finally spent the night together on Sunday, it exceeded all of Darren's expectations. He felt genuinely happy again. On the final day of the cruise, Peggy suggested they hide away in their cabin and relive the moments they had shared. Darren loved the idea, but reality beckoned. 2 people are expected back at work on Monday, and I doubt our bosses would understand, he reasoned. Peggy considered asking anyway, but Darren suggested another plan. Why don't you let me move in with you? She proposed. Although tempted, Darren decided to reside, at least for the time being, with his brother Frank while the divorce proceedings unfolded. Despite Mary's barrage of insults and threats, Darren remained unfazed, wearing his happiness like armor. The divorce was granted, and the 90-day waiting period until it became official commenced. Their children grew weary of their mother's constant tirades, suggesting that if she had treated Darren like a loving husband instead of a doormat, they might still be married. Mary's response was to cut off communication with both of them for a month. With just 10 days left before their divorce was finalized, Mary spotted the engagement announcement in the newspaper and promptly fired off a scathing email to Darren. The day after his divorce was official, Darren and Peggy exchanged vows in an intimate ceremony, attended by a select few, including his children, parents, Peggy's sister, and her parents. Darren found himself growing happier with each passing day. A month later, Mary found herself sitting alone in the bar with what remained of her friends. Around 1:30 in the morning, the bartender rang the bell signaling last call. If only, Mary muttered to herself, a hint of sadness creeping into her voice. If only. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.